Well, for our final feature article this week, we're going to turn for a little help to our head honcho, the big cheese, the man himself, Jeff Dewar, who is the CEO of Quality Digest's parent company, Millennium 360. Jeff has been writing a lot for us lately, and his most recent article, A Galactic Lesson in Quality, appeared in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. As would befit, I think, an article with such a grand title, this is a far-reaching, far-ranging, and thought-provoking piece about leadership, motivation, and the power of personal gravity. So to help us bring it all down to earth, we're joined now by our very own Jeff Dewar. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us. Well, you start off your piece with a big picture approach, and it doesn't get much bigger picture than this because it's a photo, as I think you can see right there, spanning about, I think about 10 billion light years of space and time, give or take. So why use astrophysics to convey lessons about leaders and leadership?
Yeah, well, a couple of reasons. One is it's a personal interest of mine, in particular the public understanding of science. And I admire a lot the work that Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing and Professor Lawrence Krauss at ASU, and particularly Alan Alda, the actor, the Alan Alda Center for Communication of Science out at Stony Brook University in New York. And so the personal interest side, I thought was something that just made it very easy for me to do it. But secondly, it's just a very solid metaphor. I mean, there's metaphors and there's metaphors. And when I started thinking about it from that angle, it just makes the point so beautifully.
It is, and a term that you used, speaking of metaphors, which I think was interesting and grabbed me right away, was the term gravity. Gravity is an interesting word. If you think about all of its different ramifications, it can mean importance or seriousness. It can represent attraction, and it can convey a kind of an irresistible physical force. So how did you mean that analogy?
I meant it by, I like your list. I like the one for sure. I meant it, the last one that you gave, the irresistible force. And by that I meant that you cannot be around a leader that has that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of personal involvement, and not feel the gravity, the irresistible pull towards what you're doing. And my favorite example is Herb Kelleher, the retired chairman of Southwest Airlines and one of the three co-founders, and he was the CEO for many, many years. And there's a great 60 Minutes piece that I referenced in the article that shows him, walking along the aisles, dispensing peanuts and serving drinks and joking around. And he's kind of a jokester, but that's not the point. It's that he's out there in the trenches. He's doing it. He's scooping the ice. He's kind of making fun of the crunchy ice that they have. And it's irresistible. I mean, for me as a passenger, and I fly all the airlines, I fly Southwest out here on the West Coast quite a bit, and it's irresistible for me just to watch that 60 Minutes piece and get pulled into his enthusiasm and pleasure. And I worked with a number of the other airlines in a consulting capacity many years ago, and I can tell you that the CEOs do not, at least from any interviews of any of the rank and file that I spoke with during those assignments, actually get out there and put on the apron and serve the drinks and so on. I mean, there may be an occasional thing, but Herb Kelleher was known for constantly doing this. And you as an employee couldn't get off the plane and not be affected by that kind of gravity.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about that. The gravity that drew you in was through a TV show. I mean, it wasn't even a personal connection with the guy.
I know, absolutely.
And I think that's true. In great organizations, leaders I really lead. And use the example of Herb Kelleher, of Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and you drive it home by looking at those folks. And so what did they have in common? What was the secret sauce, if you will, that set those leaders apart from run-of-the-mill managers? Big difference between leading and managing.
Yeah, I could give you the easy answer that I think, you can read in a lot of articles. It's a passion, but that's kind of a superficial answer. The real answer is the personal level involvement. In the article I was there's a picture of Walt Disney with his sleeves rolled up out there working with the cartoonists. I mean, there's like 18 levels between him and the guys on the rank and file cartoonist floor. But he's in there, and you can't, you just can't imagine the effect that has. And Elon Musk is out there, and he's in his overcoat underneath the cars, and flashlights and screwdrivers, and that sort of personal, deep involvement is, I think, the real answer is that communicates it. Even if you're cussing and swearing, instead of joking around, and maybe you're not that pleasant to be around, but it's that personal level involvement that causes that gravity to draw people towards the right kind of behaviors and the attention of what you're saying is important.
And why does it matter? I mean, that's actually something that's just kind of coming to me now. Why does that matter so much? I mean, it matters, of course, for customers of the company who get that sense from another name that came to my mind was Sam Walton back in the day, who really promote themselves as being customer-centric. But what does that do for the rank and file within the organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's the living, breathing example of if this is important enough for our CEO, our vice presidents, our plant managers, our general managers, whatever, to be doing, then it's probably important enough for us to be paying attention to as well. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. Well, I want to show you in the audience a comment to your article from one of our readers and read it to you as well, because I think it was interesting, and I think you might want to respond to it. This comes from the QD user with the handle Scott Voles 50, I believe that is his handle, who says, "No one's behavior is bent by a leader. Leaders attract like-minded people who wish to be like the leader they follow. No one follows a leader they do not like and cannot be bent to do so." How would you respond to that?
Oh, I think that's just silly. I appreciate Scott's comment very much, but that's just baloney. I mean, I worked for a guy named Mark. I won't tell you his last name. He was a tremendous leader in some ways, and he had some great ideas about the intersection between quality and training technology. And training methodology, and he did some things that were just amazing. And I personally followed him, and all of my colleagues followed him, because we believed in the potential of what he saw, of the direction that he was taking us. I didn't personally like the guy very much. I thought he was a bit extravagant and extreme, and a bit egocentric and a few other things. But there's no question that the gravity that he brought to his love and passion and inquiry of training methodology very much bent every one of our behaviors, myself included. And I can give you an example of someone a very famous CEO who was by many people in their organization very much despised. They couldn't stand him. They hated when he showed up for a meeting, and he was somebody to be avoided by many people. And that man's name, and yet people followed him to the ends of the earth with the way that he led and with the vision that he laid out in front of them. And that man's name is Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people think of Steve Jobs as this great manager. And in Walter Isaacson's biography, he actually talks about it. Steve Jobs, countless times, terrible manager. And he only began in his later years, in his late 40s, early 50s, to really begin to settle down and take a more thoughtful approach, and embraced some of the things that a good manager has to do. But in terms of that gravitational leadership of innovation and constant creativity, there was no question that he was leading ever since he first formed Apple.
Yeah, I think maybe what Scott's referring to in his comment there too is this idea that bending isn't always a good thing. I mean, if you do have a leader that's not all those things, who is egocentrical but also isn't effective, maybe like Steve Jobs was earlier in his career, maybe it's not so much bending as it is warping the organization. You think that's fair to say?
Oh yeah, I think and Deming, he talked about it a lot. Where power is derived, and he said the first and foremost position, a source of power as a leader and as a manager is your authority of office. And so by the very nature that anyone in a position and that's responsible for giving your performance reviews and all that. I mean, they automatically inherit tremendous power in that regard. And so it's incumbent upon, I won't say them to use good judgment because that's kind of obvious. It's incumbent upon their boss to make sure that that leader, that manager, is using that power appropriately. And I've seen a lot of absentee bosses, above bosses that should have been better supervised in that regard.
Well, Jeff, it's a great article. I encourage everyone out there to read it. I always love your stuff, Jeff. I'm not just saying that. You always have an interesting perspective on things. This is a good one. I like astrophysics myself, so you struck a good chord with me. So thanks for writing it. Thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you soon.
All right. Watch for my next article on evolution.
We can't wait for it. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Jeff. All right. Well.